Before we get to Lawrence, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
It's really important that people see what it looks like when the full force of the United States military is turned on two guys who are clinging to a piece of wood and about to go under, just so that they have sort of a visceral feel for what it is that we're doing.
It's illegal under international law. It's illegal under the Geneva Convention.
Here we go again. Venezuela front and center as the American political scene, as drug boats continue to get blown up and pressure on Maduro builds up, while Dems once again take the side of the drug runners. We talk about the new political hot topic.
Number 2.
There are people who have been prosecuted and who have been sentenced. If there was a linkage in that the money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI.
Right. Don't take any responsibility as a congresswoman represent the area which is overrun with corruption. Blame the FBI. Immigration culture clash as targets put on illegals in select cities, and massive corruption in Minneapolis pioneered by the Somali community led by Ilhan Omar.
Number 1.
In the short run, it looks like the American consumer is doing fine, is chugging along, companies are making profits, stock markets are high, jobs are weakening, but just a little bit. Inflation is there and maybe not going down.
Affordability, Trump style, as the historic president goes back on the campaign trail to possibly feel your pain and talk about what his remedies are, and the success in his economic front will make or break, by the way, the midterms. So Lawrence said, it doesn't matter. I think the president didn't have the best terminology when he said affordability is a hoax. My sense is he meant the Democrats claiming that as a hoax after they caused everything to be unaffordable. That's the part that drove him crazy.
Can I add to that? It's not just the Democrats. It's kind of like what I noted this morning. It's the media as well in combination that makes it a hoax. Okay, so we've been talking about affordability for like the last 4 years, Brian. We talked to the people. We've been focused on it. And then suddenly, 2 months into the president's administration, you start seeing articles and media hits about affordability. And I just don't think that's fair because it makes it seem like it's the president's fault that the affordability crisis is happening. Democrats can't break something and then expect the president to fix it within 10 months of his administration. That's just not fair.
But, the president came out and he says, I'm going to fix this thing on day one. Well, he's putting pieces in place to do that. So now I think they got to fan out, continue to talk about it. But, as you keep hearing, well, it's up to, Donald Trump to do it. You wonder what's up to other Republicans to do it. So listen to Senator John Kennedy over the weekend, cut 8.
You don't need to be Euclid to figure this out. A few years ago, we had 9% inflation. Prices were going up 9% a year. That inflation didn't originate in a vat. It was man-made, and that man's name is Joe Biden. President Biden was an inflation machine. Now, since then, the Trump administration, Republicans in Congress, and the Federal Reserve have gotten inflation down from 9% to 3%. So things are better, but they're not well. The truth is there are limited things that the executive branch can do.
And he wanted to say, flat out, they should be coming up with a reconciliation package on to start stimulating the economy without printing money.
Well, so they got the big, beautiful bill done, and that packed in a lot of stuff, but that hasn't gone into effect yet. Brian, honestly, just to be honest with you, and I know Senator Kennedy says the executive, but there's only so much government can do in general. That's part of the reason that got us in this mess is pumping so much money into the market that it caused inflation to skyrocket. What they can do, which the administration has already done, remove regulation, open up energy, give people tax cuts, give businesses tax cuts, and that's what they're doing right now. It's just Americans aren't feeling it all just yet.
And, you look at the negative press. It's, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene was the lead guest on 60 Minutes last night.
Oh, yeah.
Why would?
Only when she becomes anti-Trump.
Right. Remember Jewish space lasers were out to destroy the world?
Right.
The crazy stuff she said, couldn't even get on a committee, and and Republicans couldn't help her. Right. They bring her right through. And then she says, well, the president said he does too much for foreign policy. He met with MBS. He's not focusing on Obamacare and all these other things, giving subsidies. So she's now out. And now,
by the way,
Leslie Stahl.
I reject that characterization of And you know me, Brian, I'm one of those people that say focus here at home as well. But the president at the same time, as focusing on world peace, which has been very significant, he's been negotiating trade deals for our country as well, getting tax cuts, energy prices as well. So this idea that he's only focused on foreign policy, I just think is a hatchet job.
No, it is. But I also think when he even goes overseas to the Gulf states, they're all deals to come back.
That's right. Economic deals. That's right.
So that's the whole thing. Yeah. Does he work on Ukraine? Does he work on wars? Absolutely. You crazy if he doesn't. Try to bring an end to a
100%.
war over in Gaza? Are you kidding? That's causing so much unrest here in America?
Right.
And then cracking down on the colleges along the way. That's not domestic policy. But the Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, you'd see them destroy their career by just going over the top anti-Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Look, Senator Cassie's been critical of Trump on different areas. Rand Paul, over the top, he's getting to that area. You don't have to agree with Trump on everything, but going out of your way to become an enemy, which she's done.
Right.
So she's the lead guest with Leslie Stahl because she's doing that. So I think, too, the press is not going to help, but they should never expect the press to help.
No, I mean, they haven't helped thus far. I just think it's so interesting that when there can be a media blackout against someone, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and immediately when they become anti-Trump, suddenly they get booked on all the shows.
Right.
I thought these were people that you had great contempt for, that we should not be associated, but apparently people become likable when they're anti-Trump. It doesn't help the ratings, I can tell you that much.
So what would you do when it comes to Obamacare and the subsidies?
You know, we disagree on this, Brian. I say don't touch it. Give the money to the American people. Let them pay for something.
Well, no, that's
alternative.
touching it. So you give the same $22 billion.
Yes.
And you say you find a way to set up to the health care account. So that is doing something.
But trying to touch it, what I mean from a legislation standpoint of trying to redo health care and all that, I think it's a landmine.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's a landmine.
But if you only have like 4 weeks.
Right.
And then everyone's... And, you know, people who live paycheck to paycheck, those healthcare subsidies are about to double. They don't even like the healthcare coverage. The average deductible's $6,000. So Senator Bill Cassidy is working across the aisle. I'm not sure anything would pass, but listen to what he's doing. Cut 10.
I've been talking to Democrats. There's absolute interest. I'd like to say that some of them, no American wants a fellow American to be able to afford health insurance. Now, we may disagree the threshold. The original Obamacare put the limit of a percentage of your income, I think, at like 9.8% or something like that. So we may argue about that.
I think Cassidy's intentions are right, and he's trying to do the right thing. But I think the thing that he underestimates is that the Democrats have already made it very clear that they're going to run on health care. That means they're not going to give the president a win on health care. So the bipartisanship of trying to get some package done, sure, you'll get a Fetterman there. You may get a Shaheen to vote, but that's not enough votes. So I don't see them being resourceful with trying to get overall legislation done. I'm not saying don't try. I'm just saying it's not going to work. Once they make something a campaign talking point, that ends the bipartisanship.
You know what interesting is I saw on Jackie's show over the weekend, Josh Gottheimer came out and said, no, we've been working on something with Brian Fitzpatrick on trying to, who's his fiance to Jackie, obviously.
The problem solvers caucus.
Yeah, the problem. He goes, we are working to something. And then one of the questions was right to him. It's like, are you going to look to do something? He goes, yeah, I'm not looking for a political issue. Why do I believe him? Because he's in kind of a purple area of New Jersey, not an extreme area. So I think that him going across the aisle is not going to be detrimental.
I don't think so much as in the House, because they realize that the votes right there, they're just not going to get it. But when it comes to the Senate, which used to be the adults in the room, they shut down the government over this. So you think they're going to give a win on this? Absolutely not.
So here's what Cassie says. So Chuck Schumer says that Republicans don't want to do a deal. Cut 12.
As always, Chuck is wrong. The choice he is given is a false choice. The choice he wants to give the American people is a $6,000 deductible, a system which we send $26 billion to insurance companies, and they take 20%. They take 20% of it for profit and overhead. No, give them that choice. Okay, you want a policy with a $6,000 deductible, you got it. We want to give an additional choice, one in which your premium is lower and that you have money in an account to help pay for it. If he wants to give people that choice, I'm okay with that. but let's give them a side-by-side choice. Both on the exchanges, the patient makes the decision, not Chuck Schumer. Let the patient make the decision. That's the way it should be. Let the American have the power. Let the patient have the power.
So great on that. But guess what? The Democrats aren't going to concede on the insurance company's point, because if they concede on that, they have to admit that Obamacare failed. And you're never going to get Democrats to admit we failed when it comes to Obama legislation. It is their signature, what they say, achievement. So they're never going to concede that they messed it all up by sending that amount of money to the healthcare companies.
So in today's Wall Street Journal, the editorial report, it says they try to do a test run. Listen to this. The GAO last fall began an undercover test in which it submitted insurance applications for fictitious individuals to the federal Obamacare exchange and insurance brokers. Nearly all of its invented people were able to enroll in subsidized plans despite submitting false or no records to verify their identities. 24 applicants, 23 approved, 18 enrollees were still covered in September, suggesting the exchange and insurers didn't verify information even after enrollment. The subsidies paid to the insurance companies for those 18 applicants totaled more than $10,000 per month, equivalent to $6,700 annually, subsidy for each nominee. So they made it up to test it out, and they all failed, which shows you it's rampant with fraud.
So that GAO, for the audience, Government Accountability Office, they track a lot of this stuff. I think it goes to the larger point, Brian. It's all about money. It was never about healthcare. They don't care about fraud because they still get paid. They still get paid. And so you can't have affordable health care if you have this level of fraud. But the insurance company are never going to care as long as they still get the money. And that's why I say, Republicans, don't touch this minefield. You need more than a couple months to fix this problem.
So I want you to hear, they were going back and forth on this boat thing before I know you got to run out, Lawrence. So
no, we're good.
Back and forth on this boat thing on ABC. So Stephanopoulos did one thing he never does. He hosted his own show. So they keep going after and saying, keep asking him the same question about this Honduras president who the president pardoned. So listen to Eric Schmidt, the senator from Missouri.
Well, I'm curious about your pushback on that particular point. With your previous guest, you had zero pushback because he's giving the Democrat talking points like you spew every single week, which is probably why your ratings are so bad. But to make the point, what I'm saying is that you're trying to divert here the attention from what the American people actually support. 75% of Americans support us blowing narco-terrorists out of the water in the Caribbean who are trying to poison Americans. There's no real legal debate about the ability to do that.
It's true.
But to go after him like that, like, listen, I'll answer your question, but let's just make it clear.
Right.
I just watch you let a Democrat skate right through an interview.
That's right, because they're not being honest brokers here. Let's just start with the headline. The Washington Post article that the headline was that he ordered a second strike to kill them all never happened. Never happened. And you haven't had any member of the Democratic Party to concede on that point. The New York Times completely debunks that entire story. The unclassified version of the video debunks that story because Pete Hegseth wasn't even in the room. Right? So there was no order to kill them all because he wasn't even there, Brian. But at the end of the day, the American people don't care. They want the people that are killing their kids and their loved ones dead. Dead. So we can debate from a foreign policy standpoint.
You mean even if they're shipwrecked?
Who cares?
They keep on saying shipwrecked.
Brian.
Guess who wrecked their ship?
You know me. I used to be a huge libertarian. But you're not going to get any sympathy from me on people that are killing our people. The same when it comes from enhanced interrogation as well. The people that go after us and kill our people, we got to use all the tools in our toolbox to get them. Because guess what? The enemy is using every tool that they have as well.
So they want this tape out. This is what's going to happen. By tomorrow, it's going to hit a fever pitch. They want this tape out like they need the Epstein files. So they're going to need to get this out. We got to get this out. Well, when the American people, I want to see some video of that wedding that Obama blew up, or the wedding that he blew up. It's Alawaki's car, which had his children in it. So,
or just cover even a little bit of the Americans that have died at the hands of illegals as well, okay? And the damage that they do. Or how about you do an hour special of how the number one killer of people that are under 18, 30 and below, is the drugs that they're being poisoned on. That's what they care about.
I love on ABC, they kept asking, on CBS, on Face the Nation, they kept asking about what was going on in Minneapolis with the president generalizing about the Somali community. Any question at all about the corruption, the $1 billion that ended up in the hands? Well, we don't know if it ended up in terrorism.
They're also saying that it may be more than $1 billion now. So
I'm sure it is.
Their attention span is always the bouncing ball, not what matters to us.
All right, you got to bounce out of here. Lawrence Jones, Fox and Friends co-host. You're going to give in tomorrow?
I'll see you tomorrow for the show, but then I'll see you for your radio show next week.
Absolutely. Yeah, back on radio. Brian Kilmeade Show. Lawrence Jones, about to leave the building. Back off, everybody. Mollie, your thoughts about great to see you, by the way. Your thoughts about the president going out tomorrow to northeastern Pennsylvania.
For?
Affordability.
Oh.
He's going to start speaking to the public first time since he won the election.
He needs to talk about it a lot, but he also needs to change the way that he's talking about it. So he keeps on saying that affordability is some kind of hoax. He doesn't understand what people are talking about. And I understand his frustration in that we had, under the Biden administration, just rampant inflation, and the media would just flat out lie about it and say that there was nothing happening there. But at the same time, just because inflation has dropped quite a bit from where it was during the Biden administration doesn't mean that people aren't still feeling the effects of it. And whichever political party figures out that this is a real live issue and has policies to address it will benefit quite a bit.
The second half means everything. Everybody knows it's a good word to use and it resonates and is effective. But what you do to fix it is the key. That's what drives Trump nuts. You're going to tell me about affordability? You know, you handed me a hand grenade when I walked in here. The Wall Street Journal says this. In the Oval Office, aides presented Trump with surveys from one of the president's own pollsters detailing voters' concerns about the cost of living. His team had begun showing him social media posts that illustrate how Americans view the economy. Top aides have taken turns talking to their boss about his economic messaging and the need to emphasize what voters are feeling. Almost every senior White House official is involved in this effort. So I sense the president gets it.
Well, I don't know, because even just in the last couple of days, he's reverted to that claim about how this is not, that people are looking at this issue the wrong way. You can't tell people how they feel.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that's a big issue for Trump is that he's actually the first president in forever to deal with this in a long-term sense, working on repositioning our
trade,
our infrastructure and our business base relative to China. He's thinking about how people will be able to form families, build homes, all these things that we had a string of presidents and Congresses from left and right kind of get us into this problem. And he's trying to deal with some of this stuff. So I think he's also feeling frustrated that way. But it doesn't matter because elections are held every year or two. So
right. And I think what the president does, he listens to the crowd on certain buzz lines and sees the reaction. So if he comes out, and you can tell him whatever he wants, and he comes out and goes, the economy's doing great, aren't we doing great? And there's a mellow reaction or a flat line, that will tell him something more than anything Tony Fabrizio, who's one of his key pollsters, could show. I want you to, Doug Burgum was on One Nation on Sunday, and he said this about the difference between the states, blue and red, which might be tough for the president to tackle. Cut 6.
In some of these states, like in New England, that have got the highest electric prices in the country, have been the ones that have been blocking natural gas coming from Pennsylvania next door. Some of the lowest gas prices in the world are coming out of Pennsylvania. We've got Europeans that are happy to buy Pennsylvania gas by the ship, and we've got states next door like New York that won't take it on a pipeline that just crosses an imaginary line called that state border.
So he's saying that, the blue states might feel the pain, and there might not be anything the federal government can do about it substantially.
Well, that is another thing that reminds me of how in the first administration, Trump did a really good job of expanding our energy and making that something that was helpful to other countries as well. I just saw this thing about how Europe is giving so much more money to Russia, usually through energy, than they are Ukraine, even though they're making a big deal about the Russia-Ukraine war. And when Biden kind of cut off a lot of our energy, that helped Russia, basically, in their war effort against Ukraine.
Especially the natural gas.
Yeah.
We were setting up terminals to be able to feed Europe, and he just said, no, we're going to get it from Venezuela. Let's cut a deal with Venezuela, and let's empty our oil reserves.
But it shows how when people are concerned about energy production and transfer of energy for environmental reasons, it also can have these serious national security or international relations.
Which I just want to stop down from this conversation for a second. Your response, if I told you even 3 years ago that the green fever had broken and that people were going to come to the realization that the world is not about to blow up and we're not destroying it with climate change, and that Bill Gates would come out and go, yeah, maybe we overstated it. And now we're seeing even Tom Steyer say we have to message this if we're going to bring it up differently. You would have said, Brian, you're crazy. But I think the American people realize that that was a lark.
This actually enrages me, and I've never been a climate alarmist, but seeing all of these billionaires change their tune on this at a time when there actually are some issues in play with, in order to have AI work, you have to have unbelievable energy, expansion of resources. And this is the time when, if they really cared about anything they said that they believed in, this would be a big issue. And instead, because they stand to make so much money from this, they're just changing their tune. And I don't have high regard for these people to begin with, but it's appalling to me.
All the banks are stopping their whole zero climate push on the dime. JP Morgan was the first. They all just follow. Now, all of a sudden, the oil and gas companies, it's no longer a 4-letter word. And you can serve on there. And they're not letting these these green activists become board members. It's unbelievable that this is happening now, and you see it in Europe too.
It also shows that the repercussions for the loss of trust in institutions. Yeah. So when people realize, like, oh, these people never meant a word they said, they won't believe anything else they say going forward. Or, you saw with the Hep B vaccine that came out last week, they're saying we're no longer going to require it for all babies. It's actually a smart decision in that only children of prostitutes and intravenous drug users really need that Hep B vaccine. But it also shows that people had just gone along with whatever was recommended by public health officials, and then they realized, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, and so now they're just rejecting all of it. And that could be a problem too. I
hear you. That's looking big picture. That's you're such a great columnist too. But a couple of things. Did you see some of the pushback from Scott Gottlieb yesterday? They said, should you be, for evidently when you're born, the infants get like 5 to 7 shots, and they want to stop that. And the Hep B, RFK Jr. says, no, unless someone's an intravenous drug user, we're not going to do it. And there's a very small chance of them contracting this. It's not worth the risk. And he says, well, no, you want to get it down to 0, and 0 to 5, there's a 50% chance of happening. 5 to 10 is where it becomes a 2% happening. So there's a sense, I'm not saying everybody wants to benefit financially off vaccines, but there's essentially like, hold on, everybody, let's stop this.
Well, first off, you can actually test for Hep B in adult women fairly easily, which makes it easy to screen which baby should get this or not. But also, there are a lot of people with interests in pharmaceutical companies that would like to keep having as many vaccines as possible. I think vaccines are a wonderful gift from God, and my children received vaccines. But there also needs to be room for people to argue that it's just way too much, or that unnecessary ones.
Can you stagger them and not blitz the kid with them, the infant, and make a parent feel terrible and say, you can have your child born here unless you take all the vaccines?
Exactly.
So there's a lot going on. Healthcare. There seems to be some type of a compromise working. Here's Bill Cassidy, cut 11.
If we can get to a framework where they give the American people a choice, they can stay with the policy they have with a $6,000 deductible, or they can go to another policy with a lower premium and money in a health savings account for them to purchase that which they do. The rest is just political decisions. What dial do you turn here, dial do you turn there in order to get your votes? I think we can do this if people are of goodwill. I say we don't want a Republican solution, a Democratic solution. We want an American solution that works for Americans. If my Democratic friends believe that, we can do it.
Now bring me inside Washington. What's going on?
Well, I love that general idea that Bill Cassidy just said about how Democrats and Republicans should come together to solve problems. We're about as far away from that in Washington, D.C. as is possible, perhaps a reflection of how closely divided the Senate and the House are. But the real problem with this issue is that the way Obamacare was structured will create a system where you're always going to be subsidizing healthcare insurance companies more and more and more. There's no way to stop that given the way that Obamacare was built. And that's part of the genius of the plan if you want government control of healthcare insurance and healthcare, but it's not going to get any better. So no one in Washington, D.C., Republicans in particular, seem to have the courage to address the underlying problem that will not be fixed by just throwing more money at it.
Well, how do you feel about something being done timely?
Well, yeah, the pressure is on, and they don't. Not only do we know that they need to get it done this month, they really want to get home before the holidays, and so that will help incentivize them to come up with an agreement. Nobody comes to bipartisanship better than when there's a chance to spend taxpayer money. So I have a feeling Republicans will cave fairly quickly on this.
Without any health savings, without anything, if they cave quickly, it'll look like the holdout, the lockdown, the shutdown was worth it for Democrats.
Well, and who knows? I was just at a meeting on Friday where people were saying there were some good ideas, that might have purchase, and we'll know more about it this week. But having said that, that's still the thing about the shutdown was that it was really helpful for shutting down all the progress the Trump administration had been making, which was politically favorable, and also created a crisis in Northern Virginia that enabled some really big wins in Virginia and New Jersey. So it worked for Democrats, but not necessarily because of this issue.
So I want you to hear what Senator John Kennedy said. Enough about the president. We could do something ourselves. Cut 15.
We need to reform the Obamacare. We need to go to site neutrality. We need PBM reform. There are a whole host of things we can do. And if I could do them on my own, I would, but I don't have control of the floor. And I have been preaching to my colleagues in the Senate for months now that we need to do another reconciliation bill. And I'm going to chase them like they stole Christmas until they agree with me. I don't know why we're sitting here doing nothing.
Your thoughts?
This, again, is one of these situations where Republican voters for such a long time begged Republicans to have some way to overturn Obamacare or make some massive change to it. And they never really seem to have a plan that enough of them agree with to make anything of it. So perhaps John Kennedy and his colleagues will prove us wrong, but they need to have a plan, all agree on it, and communicate it well.
Yeah, I hear you. I just think that why would John Thune not be trying to do something? Why would Speaker Johnson not be trying to do something separate from anything? What else do you have? The big, beautiful bill, bundle of accomplishments, a lot was tied into it. I understand that. But what else are you doing? Like, what is, you don't have to take every message from the president. What do you guys want to do?
But also, you could take the message from the president. He's a very popular figure. Yeah. You could do things that he's doing that are popular. For instance, Donald Trump is working on this Venezuela situation. How hard would it be for Congress to provide support? Even Trump, I think, should go to Congress and ask for support for it, which would make it more legally strong, and also would be the important debate that the way that Americans have debate is through Congress. They're supposed to be this great debating body, and they never have any debates about anything about what we're doing, even if it's about going to war with another country.
That is?
Well, I think that it became easier to just outsource everything to unelected bureaucrats in federal agencies, and there are downsides to having debates coming up with solutions that are not always politically popular. And the more that they could outsource that to the executive branch, the easier it was for them. But Congress is almost completely broken. I mean, the last time that we saw any real solutions coming out of that body, and it's our Article 1 branch. It means it's our most important branch, or should be, but it's not. So,
yeah. Do you think it's because it would be embarrassing for Thune or Johnson not to have votes on something they wanted to have votes on because there's so many people that don't agree? You got the Rand Pauls and others.
I want to say, in defense of both of these individuals, they are dealing with majorities that are the narrowest they've ever been. And they're also dealing with a political party that prides itself on independence of thought. Nancy Pelosi was very good at what she did, for instance, as Speaker, but she was able to rule with an iron fist in a way that Republicans just generally don't allow their leaders to do. And so it's a bad situation. I would just say for both individuals, if they don't come up with a vision and start thinking about what would be beneficial for permanentizing some of these popular policies, they're going to lose so horribly in a year. It's not even going to be funny.
Mollie Hemingway, we'll see you on Outnumbered. Is that okay?
Take care.
Thanks so much. Back in a moment.
There are people who have been prosecuted and who have been sentenced. If there was a linkage in that the money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI and our court system in not figuring that out and basically charging them with these charges.
Isn't this unbelievable? I want to put this in context. That's Ilhan Omar. You recognize her. And she was on Face the Nation to defend the Somali community after most of the 87 people involved with a minimum billion dollar scam were found out to be Somalis. Some here legally, some green cards, some illegally. All scamming the system to the tune of $1 billion out of taxpayer money that should be going to children's autistic programs and the poor people's food programs. All these pandemic money that happened after. This happened in her district, and some of the people involved were directly attached to her. This Guhad Hashi Saeed is a former campaign worker 2018 and 2020, pleaded guilty to running a fake food program, stole over $2 million for her personal benefit. So the restaurant where she holds fundraisers, co-owned this guy Omar held in 2018, held a congressional victory party there. This guy was convicted of serving phantom meals during COVID-19 and stole $12 million for her personal benefit. And guess what? He's got 35 seats in this restaurant. He made $18 million he requested for reimbursement and got most of it. So she's wondering why people are pointing to her, and now she's mad at the FBI. If there are terror ties to this and the FBI is a failure of them, to not realize the Somali community in which she's a congressional lawmaker is mailing money back or wiring it over to al-Shabaab in Somalia. And if it is in fact the case, it's the FBI's problem. Senator Markwayne Mullin joins us now, Armed Services and Appropriations Committee. Senator, I was amazed at the audacity, and I was also amazed on Face the Nation. They didn't bring up these two linkages to her personally.
Well, and Brian, thanks for having me on your show. And it's bigger than that. First of all, Omar is an absolute liar, and we know this. I mean, she says anything that she can to spin it any other way. And right now she's blamed it on the FBI. It's their fault. Which, if the FBI was investigating it, that she would be saying the FBI is discriminating against the Somalian government or Somalian people. The truth is that it's even bigger than that. You're using the numbers, which are very conservative numbers. We're seeing numbers that it starts at $1 billion. It could run as high as $8 billion.
Wow.
Now, we're just starting it. And by the way, this restaurant owner, we know for a fact it's $12 million. But there is reports that he and she, the co-owners, could be connected to as much as $250 million, which, by the way, Omar had direct relationships with this. And we're not seeing this in Somalia communities outside of her district. This is happening inside her district.
Great point.
So to say that she is complacent would be very nice. To say that she knew something was going on would I don't think it's too far out of line. I think you have to look into her and her involvement and how she may have coached these individuals on how to go and cheat the system. And I'm very serious. I'm not trying to be ugly towards it, but these individuals had to have some cover someplace to be that bold to, like you said, a restaurant that has 35 tables. Now, my wife and I, we were in the restaurant business. We had 2 restaurants, and we had a lot more than 35 tables. And we did nowhere near 12 to 15 to $18 million worth of sales a year, not even close. And so it's actually extremely scary. And then al-Shabaab, keep in mind, I think a lot of your listeners are very informed individuals, but I think a lot of people think al-Shabaab is an individual. Al-Shabaab is an ISIS-K organization. It is ISIS, so it is a terrorist organization, not an individual. It's a terrorist organization that we already know for a fact that a percentage of this money that was stolen from U.S. taxpayers was funneled into Somalia, which was directly funneling money straight into al-Shabaab, the organization. And keep in mind, we have a special forces that are over there right now fighting against al-Shabaab. So we're funding the enemy we're fighting through the Somalia community that we open our doors to allow them to come into our country and chase the American dream. And what they do, they slapped us across the face, stole our money, and funneled it to a terrorist organization.
And what people should understand, too, the Biden Justice Department called it the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country. and that it was pocketing COVID-era welfare funds, more than $1 billion in taxpayer funds. So they started this, and now our Treasury is going to pick it up. And, we can track down terrorists. We're good at tracking down money. Here's Scott Besson, Cut 22.
The initial fraud that was discovered by the IRS, for which I'm the acting commissioner, is discovered by IRS Criminal Investigations Unit. This was not an endogenous thing that the state of Minnesota decided we had to go in and clean up the mess for them, and this is part of the continued cleanup. A lot of money has been transferred from the individuals who committed this fraud, including those who donated to the governor, donated to Representative Omar, and donated to A.G. Ellison.
So he's pursuing it. He wouldn't say, hey, Al-Shabaab, definitely. But you know what? He's working towards that. And I'm sure they're going to find a way. She came out. She did say one thing that I researched this morning. She said, I told the AG to investigate this back in 2022. And she did. But she actually told the USDA, Governor Vilsack, or former governor, Secretary Vilsack, to look into it. She didn't tell the AG. She didn't tell the ag department in Minnesota look into it, because a lot of this was food programs. She thinks that exonerates herself. So she's looking to cover herself.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Brian. She's covering herself. She is not someone that we can trust. And I have not been a fan of Omar ever. It is absolutely absurd the way that she takes advantage of a country that gave her the opportunity. She could never be in the position that she's in if she was still in Somalia. But we gave her this opportunity. We took her in. We took her family in. We allowed her to become a naturalized citizen back in 2018, and she should tell the American story. Instead, she fights America's principles every single step of the way. And instead of her embracing it and saying that, and then with the Somalian community and saying, look, we have an opportunity to make something, to be better than what we ever had in a different country, she demonizes the American government over and over again, which, either we're a nation of laws or we're a lawless nation. I've said this over and over again. What separates it from a third world country, what separates from Somalia, the reason why people left Somalia is because they feared their life. It was a lawless country. They came to a country of laws, and they take advantage of it. And then when we go to enforce it, you demonize it. And when you demonize us trying to enforce the laws of our nation, then that makes you not anti-police, that makes you anti-American. And I truly believe that's where she is at. And she, in 2022, when she did ask this, which you're correct, but she asked it in a way of, hey, you may want to look into this, but then she left it alone. Just enough to give her just a little bit of a cover, Brian, but she never pursued it. If she wanted, did she ever talk about it publicly? One time. She spoke about it publicly one single time, and then it totally went away. Well, the question is why did it go away? And then when we started looking into it, when the Trump administration really started digging into this, the Biden administration started it, they stopped. They didn't pursue it. We picked it up. Immediately what we started doing is getting pushback from the Waltz administration, the state government. Now, we had state employees that were going outside of Tim Waltz, Governor Waltz, and was working with us, which we call those whistleblowers. But they have reports where they were warning the governor and the attorney general, the state attorney general, that this was going on, and they decided to turn a blind eye to it during the entire presidential campaign.
Talking to Senator Markwayne Mullin. Senator, now the big thing is we've seen this pattern before with the Epstein files, with the Russia situation, with the impeachment. Now they're going to harp on, we need that video of the second strike of the September 2nd hit on the Venezuelan drug boat. And I don't think, I hope the American people understand that this is going to be one of those things they're going to look to distract from. You have everyone weighing in on it. And I think the real story is, how do we get Maduro out of there? But I just want you to hear some of what Democrats are saying. Cut 27.
It's really important that people see what it looks like when the full force of the United States military is turned on two guys who are clinging to a piece of wood and about to go under, just so that they have sort of a visceral feel for what it is that we're doing.
By the way, the individuals in that boat were not even aimed at the United States. So everything that they've done has been illegal. It's illegal under international law. It's illegal under the Geneva Convention. And it certainly is even illegal under domestic law. It was essentially murder with that double tap strike.
Do you agree with that?
No, and somebody said they were hanging onto a piece of lumber is lying. Either they're lying or they didn't see the video. That's absolutely, positively, 100% a lie. And that person knows there's no excuse for being uninformed, because everybody could be read in on this if they chose to. Now, it takes time. You got to go down to the SCIF.
Right.
You got to request it. It's got to be walked over from the White House, and you've got to sit there and you've got to read documents after document after document after document, which I've done. And then you can request to be briefed on it, which I have done, and you can watch the video if you want to see it. The video does not need to be released, and there's for reasons behind that I can't get into. But these people were not clinging to a piece of lumber. What they were trying to do is flip their boat back over, and I can share this with you. They were trying to flip their boat back over and actively radioing another boat that was in the region that we were tracking to come pick them up. Now, that is still a combatant, and it is very clear that if there is a stranded person, if an individual, the Navy has their own code, if an individual is stranded and shipwrecked, we have an obligation to pick that person up. But we in no way are an obligation to put our men and women at harm's way if we deem them still a threat. These individuals is actively still trying to get away. We know those boats had weapons in them. We know there's another boat in the area. We're not dispatching our men and women to save a terrorist butt who is still trying to fight against us. And I hope these individuals are truly on the bottom of the ocean and we never see or hear from them again, because that is exactly where they deserve. Now, for these Democrats that are out there trying to make something about this, the worst drug activity in the country is happening in these blue states' backyards, and they know it. And we've lost over 66,500 individuals in 2024 to drug overdoses. Now, the U.S. and the entire Vietnam War lost over just over 57,200 individuals. So we lost more last year from these terrorist organizations poisoning our streets, poisoning our families, poisoning our friends, poisoning our communities than we did in the entire Vietnam War. And the Democrats are trying to defend them, saying that they have a right. These are terrorist organizations. 24 of these, Brian, the 24 cartels have been deemed a terrorist organization, and we're attacking them the same way that Obama attacked terrorist organizations, and he killed over 1,000 individuals with drone strikes, and these Democrats said not one thing about that, not one thing.
And you know what? I was for Obama doing that, but the thing, what part of the reason he did that, he didn't want to fill up Gitmo. We could have gotten intelligence from some of these people on a case by case basis, but he's like, I don't want to put them anywhere. I want to close Gitmo, which he never did. So that's why he wanted to kill them at their weddings and kill them, driving and wipe out their families too. So I want to talk about the real issue, and that's getting Maduro out. How do you resolve this thing successfully? In the Washington Post today, they say Maduro said fears that he's going to be overthrown, but right now his inner circle is holding up. Both sides are looking for an off-ramp. And here is what Elliot Abrams said should happen. Donald Trump's former U.S. Special Representative to Venezuela. Cut 30.
Well, this is not Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. First, those countries had zero history of democracy. Venezuela had 50 years of democracy after it overthrew a dictator in 1958. Second, those countries are all split, Sunni, Shia, Kurd, Christian, Druze. Not Venezuela, which is a pretty united country from that point of view, and it is surrounded in the Western Hemisphere by democracies. So I think the chances that this would lead to a democracy, as has happened in the rest of South America, are really much, much better.
So, I mean, that's the goal, to get Maduro out. Is there anything you could tell our audience about ending the standoff? Because this is the real issue.
So Maduro, we gave him an opportunity to leave. Now, we have a bounty on his head. But we have told him he could leave. We gave him an opportunity to go to China, to Russia, or to a couple other countries, but not in the region. In other words, he can't go to Cuba. Not in the region to where he's at. And keep in mind, they had an election. Venezuela had an election. They elected a new president, and she is more than capable of running the country. Maduro decided to stay back. He's a dictator that needs to leave, and so we're saying, hey, man, if you want to go, we'll clear the airspace. We'll allow a plane to come and pick you up, and you go. We're not even going to try to come back for your money. We're going to take the bounty off your head. You go live your life. Allow Venezuela to become the democracy and the economic powerhouse that they used to be in the region again, and stabilize that region. Because since Venezuela is destabilized, a lot of the region is now destabilizing around it. But I don't think we commit troops to the country. In fact, we're not going to commit troops to the country. We're not going to do that. Now, we may have some strikes on some lab factories that are poisoning our streets with these drugs, but we're not going to go in. The people are going to have to stand up, and when they do, we'll be happy to support the new government.
Yeah. Do you see any end to this? Do you have a prediction?
No, I don't have one. It's very hard to tell. We do have communications with people that are in Venezuela, but it's very difficult to say. It's Maduro's position to say, do I want to leave or not? Most of the time, dictators are not suicidal. They have a will to live, and when the seat gets too hot and you give them an opportunity, they have to go. But we've also let Maduro know that the door's closing. At some point, he's not going to have the opportunity to get out because we're not going to rescue him. He can fly out on his own, but if the temperature gets too hot, that's on him.
Got it. Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it, Senator Mullin. Always a lot to talk about. Senator Markwayne Mullin, hopefully we're going to see some resolve on a bunch of things and get things done. President starts his affordability push tomorrow night. Thanks, Senator.
Yeah. Thank you.
You got it. Salena Zito, who knows as much about Pennsylvania politics as anyone in the country. Salena, welcome back.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, so Salena, why do you think the president chose Pennsylvania in that area in particular first?
Well, I think he chose Pennsylvania because it's a great microcosm of the country. You have a mix of rural, meaning farmers and the farming industry. You also have suburban, so you have C-suite and people in the executive sort of end of the economy. And you also have the working class. Right? You have the people working in the energy industry, working in AI, working in manufacturing. And so going to a place like Pennsylvania is sort of like Billy Joel singing Allentown, right? People can see themselves in the place that he's put himself.
So I think that one thing is pretty clear is when he came out and just said the whole thing's a hoax, people were interpreting that as him saying there's no economic angst out there, or people are things people saying, well, their people are just don't understand that they can make ends meet. That's not what the president meant. He meant that for Democrats to bring up affordability as if they had nothing to do with making things unaffordable was maddening to him. But evidently, according to the Wall Street Journal and the Oval Office, aides presented Trump with surveys from one of the president's own pollsters detailing voters concerned about the cost of living. His team had begun showing him social media posts that illustrate how Americans view it. Top aides have taking time with him about his economic messaging and the way to hone it. Do you think that's important for people that he trusts to tell him about the economic situation?
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to have people that you trust, that have been around you, people that also can say to you, look, we need to talk about this, right? One of the things that I've always found sort of interesting about President Trump and the success, part of behind it is his success, is his ability to surround himself with people that can say, no, don't do that, or you better do this. You always see very successful CEOs that way, and he does the same thing. And so coming out and talking about affordability in a way that connects people with their problems, I think is really, really important. I suspect what we'll see today or tomorrow is he'll come out and say, look, these are the things that we have done to make things better, but things still aren't moving as fast as you would like. We know your bottom line is hurting. A lot of those costs are driven by healthcare, by the way. And here's what we're going to do to make things better, right? Healthcare is taking a big chunk out of people's lives. And anybody who was covering Obamacare in 2010 and kept saying, this is not going to work out in the long run, is now sitting back and saying, see, I told you so.
And on the Republican side, they say we don't want to bail it out because I think it's, I understand that thought. They did this thing. I don't know if you had a chance to read the Wall Street Journal editorial page today, but it's pretty amazing. They did this look, and the GAO, Government Accountability Office, decided to see where the fraud is with Obamacare. So they had 24 applications put out there, all fraudulent. They did this as a test pattern. So the GAO last fall began an undercover test in which it submitted insurance applications for fictitious individuals to the Federal Obamacare Exchange and insurance brokers. All of these invented people are able to enroll in a subsidized plan despite submitting false or no records to verify their subsidies. So that means out of the 24 applications, 23 were approved. 18 enrollees were still covered as of September. So 18 fake people. So they made no effort. They just did a test pattern. Do you realize how rough with fraud this thing is?
Oh, yeah. I covered it back in 2009, 2010. There were a lot of holes in this system, right? And there were even Democrats, I forget they were called the something 11, who warned that this was going to be a problem. One of them was Jack Murtha, a Democrat. He's now the late Jack Murtha from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And so this system that they were putting in place was always fraught with holes and the ability for people to do exactly what you just pointed out in that Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah, so listen to this. In 2023, one Social Security number was used to apply for more than 125 policies. And perhaps there was just identity theft, but it also was possible for brokers submitting fake Social Security numbers to enroll ineligible or phantom people in plans, and they're cashing in. So anybody who says this isn't a problem, having said all that, do you think Republicans, from a political standpoint, if they just don't do anything and allow the subsidies to evaporate like they were supposed to sunset, like when it passed, do you think they'll pay a political price? What do you think is the best political thing to do?
Well, I think I would first of all make the point that it was the Democrats in power in 2021 who were the ones that sunsetted it, right? Because they arrogantly believed that they were going to be in power for the long run, right? And Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman from my state has been very explicit about pointing that out. But I think the Republicans need to say something like, look, I know you all are hurting with healthcare. This was caused by Obamacare. We are going to fix it. We're going to let this expire, and we're going to do a better job. But they better come up with a good plan.
Yeah, I think whatever it's got to do, it's got to happen in the next few weeks. And Democrats might say, let's just make it impossible. I need this issue for next year during the midterms, and maybe will they be able to spot something? Be able to spot that as pure politics. Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, oftentimes, he's a supporter of President Trump, but will buck him sometimes. He's in the Problem Solvers Caucus. He says he's looking to do something, and they're making some progress. Cut 13.
Time is obviously short. Affordability is an issue across the board, certainly with healthcare, and we have to make sure that we do not let prices go up at the end of the year. That's very, very important. There's not enough time to come up with a brand new construct, so I think we can get the best of both worlds here by having a short-term extension of the premium tax credits with guardrails, with income caps, and also have HSAs in the mix where money will go directly to the individual rather than to the insurance company, and construct HSAs in a way that allow them to be used for health insurance premiums.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's really smart. Look, part of the big problem with healthcare is the middleman, right? The middleman is what's driving the cost up. And that plan of his essentially takes that power away and takes that flow of income away and gives it back to the consumer, but also gives the consumer the healthcare coverage that they need for their family.
Yeah. So, we'll see if they can work that through. Remember, President Trump was just going to renew it. And then his whole party said, no, don't do that. So he went on the sideline here. From what you know, are the Freedom Caucus and others is going to be a no-go on this?
I don't know. I think they're going to hear from their constituents, right? Their constituents are, it doesn't matter who they voted for, even their conservative constituents are having problems with their health care, and the costs are going up. They have to address the issue. I think Fitzpatrick is presenting an issue that solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, here's more from him. Cut 14.
The one thing that I've shared with leadership, Mike, is do not put a single party bill on the floor because it's not going to pass the Senate with 60 votes. We already know that. So let's put a two-party bill together now that's going to pass, that will address the cliff that we face at the end of the year, but will still deal with the long-term issues of getting to the true drivers of healthcare. I think that's something we can all agree on.
So I think he's going to move forward with it. We'll see. The president, they've clashed before, but subtly on Ukraine and other things.
Yeah, they have clashed before, but also, if we look at history at Trump and we look at his history with people that he has clashed with, but has also respected, right? And he is not someone like I have this interview with him about changing his mind. He's not reluctant to change his mind on issues. He's not also reluctant to change his mind about people.
So I want to talk about Governor Josh Shapiro. Remember, he did an interview that was in the Atlantic that had, was from, I guess, a month ago, where they read an excerpt from Kamala Harris's. At that point, her book wasn't released yet, at which time they said when he walked in as the vice presidential interview, he took control, made demands, and came off arrogant and petty. And he got very offended by that and used an expletive and walked himself back, on that. But he showed a fire to him. Do you think he is marshaling what Axios seems to be to control the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania and maybe be ahead of the game when it comes to the Democratic nomination for president?
Well, I think what he wants to do, I think his general plan is, and by the way, if people read the book Butler, they know that Shapiro explicitly said he turned her down, right? So I think this has a lot to do with her having sour grapes towards him. And I interviewed him on that. I think that Shapiro is trying to, what he's attempting to do is have a robust win in Pennsylvania. When he runs for governor, you look for him to announce in January that he's running again for the governor's seat, and to show that he can win in a state that Trump won. Show that he can bring with him majorities in the state house and the state legislature, and maybe flip a couple congressional seats. I think that's his plan, and that if he's successful, then he would take that to the next level as being sort of the default leader of the party. But Shapiro has shown that he can win a state like Pennsylvania. And I think you need to be a Democrat to do that, to run for president. Whereas if you look at Gavin Newsom, there's no way he could win Pennsylvania. Absolutely no way.
Yeah, anybody who looks past his smooth style and looks for substance. But I just can't wait for Democrats to debate Democrats. I find him somewhat formulatic. I feel like he gets a formula, has a speech, can deliver a speech. The Obama impersonator type thing. I'm not saying he's not smart, but I just don't find him very at ease in conversational, Shapiro, what I've seen. What's he like?
So I have covered him for 25 years. I've known him since he was a state rep. And he is, to your point, he rarely steps out of that formula, right? The answers come across very genuine and very smooth and very authentic. But unless you have covered him for a very, very long time, it is very, very rare that you see him step out of that. I have been lucky in my coverage of him on numerous hard issues, like what he did with the Catholic priest in Pennsylvania. That was not an easy issue to take on as the Attorney General. But he's very disciplined, and he's a very nimble political athlete. But people also want authenticity.
Yeah.
So that's going to be his challenge.
And he doesn't get along with Fetterman, right?
Pardon?
He does not get along with Fetterman, correct?
Oh, no, they do not get along at all.
Why?
It has to do with the prison board. And it's a long-standing feud, and they're very cordial to each other in public. But personally, they don't, unless that has been amended.
Not according to Fetterman's book, it hasn't been.
Yeah, right. By the way, his book was really, really good.
I agree with you. I hope it did well. I know he sold it a lot here, but not many people were booking him elsewhere. Salena Zito, thanks so much. Appreciate it with the Washington Examiner. Always great.
Thank you.
Back in a moment.